You know what today is?
Valentine's Day!
No!
Forget about that!
I had really hoped that by this point in time, things would be different. Alas, this is where we are. Today marks the 7-year anniversary of Donkey Kong Country Tropical Freeze, the last Donkey Kong game ever made. I believe this is now officially the biggest gap between games that we've seen so far for the Big 8. Every year I say, this is the year, and end up sorely let down like a sad little monkus. The Big 8 turns 40 this year, and for being one of the most beloved and cherished video game franchises in history, Nintendo sure has done a great job of not treating it the greatest for about the last 25 or so years of its existence. This is a series that saved Nintendo and revitalized the general public's interest and perception of video games in general. A series that is, after all these years, still in the top 5 performing Nintendo series sales-wise, and really is just one of the most recognizable video game icons of all time. That's no small feat, so it's pretty crazy to think that we're going on 7 years strong without a trace of DK. I'd say that's a little bit of a head scratcher. How could such a historically important video game series go so painfully underutilized like this? Well, I believe the years of patiently waiting are about to pay off. Not sure how much of a tinfoil hat wearing conspiracy theorist I'm going to appear to be in this video, but I do think there is some substantial evidence that Nintendo is looking to revitalize the DK brand, and I'd like to build up my case. I'm gonna break this video up a bit and talk about what we could be seeing for DK in the near future, as well as my own wishes for the big guy's 40th anniversary. Nintendo has straight up been neglectful toward the DK series since the Microsoft buyout of Rareware. I don't think anyone would deny that, but I also don't think it's because Nintendo has some sort of stigma towards Rareware's DK universe or anything like that. I think it mostly boils down to a lack of vision and proper direction for the series. The 2000s was littered with less than well-received Bongo peripheral spin-off titles, and hey, credit where credit is due, Nintendo saw how this was damaging the brand image for DK and put a stop to all that, finally landing the series in the lap of its current residents of Retro Studios. Retro has done a fantastic job with their own Donkey Kong Country games. They are easily 2 of the best platformers of all time. As great as it would be for them to spearhead a 3rd entry in their line of country games, that probably won't be happening anytime soon, considering they are currently occupied with Metroid Prime 4. So that begs the question: who is left to work on Donkey Kong? Well, that's a question that is much easier asked than answered. I will say that based on some sources that I personally have, I am very confident that DK will be getting a new game soon, and since the start of the year, more insiders have been coming out of the woodwork to reassure us about this. When it comes down to the who is making it and the what it is, the details are a little less consistent. The big studio name being tossed around right now is EPD Tokyo, Nintendo's own internal studio responsible for many of the 3D Mario titles, including but not limited to Odyssey, 3D World, and Galaxy. If this is true, this wouldn't be their first go with the DK series. And they also developed the often overlooked and underrated gem, Donkey Kong Jungle Beat, which was a great game aside from trying to erase every non-Donkey Kong character from the series canon. Yeah, that's a thing that they did. I'd love to do a video talking about this game someday. Maybe soon? I don't know. But the studio obviously has a lot of talent. They've created some of my favorite Mario games, and if they really are spearheading a new 3D Donkey Kong game, I think they have the expertise to really make it shine and reintroduce DK to a whole new generation of gamers. I'll get more into my own hopes and wants for the next DK game later on in the video, but as of right now, we don't have a whole lot of solid info regarding what type of game it's going to be. There were job listings at the end of 2019 for a new 2D action platformer at the Tokyo studio, which may or may not be for DK, but it does line up with what we've been hearing. They also had job listings for a new 3D platform. So maybe they've split this studio into 2 separate teams, one for this 2D game and one for this 3D game, and there's a solid chance that one of those 2 could be Donkey Kong. But who knows, maybe this Tokyo branch isn't the studio developing this rumored DK title. It's kind of in the air. But what is less pie in the sky is the fact that Nintendo is definitely interested in bringing DK back in a big way. I couldn't tell you exactly when talks began to try and rejuvenate the brand, but I think one of the earliest wake-up calls can be traced back to 2015, during which time Nintendo launched the Super Smash Bros. Fighter Ballot. If you haven't seen the signs since then, well, then you haven't been paying attention.
If you listen, you can hear it coming.
If there's one thing that I've learned about DK fans, it's that we absolutely love Rareware's Donkey Kong Country games, and more importantly, the characters they created. The biggest common complaint about modern DK is the lack of the Kremlings, DK's old adversaries that really added a lot of charm to those games. Just hear me out, all of this ties back into the fighter ballot. The leader of the Kremling Armada, King K. Rool, always had this hilarious, goofy charm to him, and it was always fun to see what kind of persona he would adopt for the next game. A king, a pirate, a scientist, a pirate scientist king in space! K. Rool and the Kremlings remain DK's rivals even after the Microsoft buyout of Rareware, so it always confuses me when people to this day still assume that the Kremlings are owned by Microsoft, but I digress. The private Japanese company Payon was brought in to take on DK duties following Rareware, and in the brief time that they worked on DK titles, they continued utilizing Rareware's characters. These characters were still integral to the DK brand until one day Nintendo just decided that they weren't. June 19th, 2008 was the last we would see of K. Rool and the Kremlings in the Mario spin-off title, Mario Super Sluggers. After this, we would see Returns reboot the Country franchise, and in doing this, the Kremlings were left in the dust for the mostly forgettable Tiki Tak Tribe, and more recently, the Snowmads. They were fine, but many DK fans like myself felt that leaving the Kremlings in the dust was an injustice that needed to be corrected. These new guys just didn't have the strong characterization and charm that the Kremlings did, which made their absence all the more noticeable. So that brings me back around to the Smash Bros. Fighter ballot. DK fans far and wide seized the opportunity to make it known to Nintendo that we didn't just want K. Rool to join the Smash roster, but we wanted him back in Donkey Kong. The games, not in Donkey Kong. Anyway, results weren't immediate. We were given a Mii costume consolation prize, but a few years later, we were graced with the best Smash Bros. Character reveal of all time, King K. Rool. This is objective fact, don't try to argue it. This clocks in at just over 10 years of absence for the Green Goon, but because of the fans, he is now cemented in the Video Game Hall of Fame that is Super Smash Bros. Ultimate. It's because of this raw passion that I think Nintendo has had a bit of a reality check. I have no idea why they decided to ditch the Kremlings for all these years. I get the feeling that whatever bigwig was calling the shots at the time had some sort of misconception that people just didn't care about them, or they are strictly curating what characters get to represent the brand, I don't know. But we made it abundantly clear. We really care about these guys, and Nintendo would be insane to continue ignoring them. I realize this whole Kremling portion of the video has been a little bit long-winded, but I really wanted to illustrate the power and influence that I believe this raw passion has had on Nintendo's treatment of DK. In the years since the ballot, even though DK has continued to appear in Mario spin-off titles, when it comes to merchandising, DK has been removed entirely from the Mario lineup. Now when you find DK-related merch, it's all specifically DK branded. This may not seem like a big deal to some, but you gotta understand, this is after years of DK being treated as a Mario side character, rather than the star of his own series. If Nintendo weren't planning something bigger, why would they even bother to make the distinction? Wouldn't it be more lucrative to just keep DK under the Mario branded merch? If you think this is reaching, I wouldn't blame you. But even if we were to put merchandising aside, there's no denying the planned Donkey Kong expansion to the Universal theme parks. If you ask me, this is probably the biggest piece of supporting evidence to bringing DK back in a big way. A several $100 million park expansion is nothing to sneeze at, and for them to center it around DK, well, it speaks for itself. That's a big deal. Recently, the Nintendo World app was data mined, and lots of DK assets were found within, so it's only a matter of time before the park expansion goes into production. Hopefully. Alright, so if none of what I've said has convinced you so far, well, nothing else here probably will. But let's take a look at Nintendo's software lineup. After all, games are Nintendo's bread and butter, no matter how much they no longer want it to be. Topic for another day. In early 2018, we started to catch a glimpse of Nintendo ramping things up. Tropical Freeze released in May, followed by the Donkey Kong's Adventure expansion to Mario plus Rabbids in June. 2 months later, we would get the grand reveal of K. Rool and Smash Bros, which I can't hammer in enough how big of a deal this is and was for the fanbase. 2019 was a bit of a slow year for DK, but September saw the release of Mario Kart Tour, which brought Diddy Kong back as a playable character. At first glance, this is no big deal, but he was absent from Mario Kart for about 11 years, so this was kinda cool. In May 2020, it was announced that Dixie and Funky would become playable characters in Tour as well. This became Dixie's Mario Kart debut. July brought the announcement of Donkey Kong Country hitting the NSO service, September brought DKC 2, and finally December with DKC 3. Looking back at everything like this, there really has been a decent trickle of DK content on Switch and in general. Sure, it's all pretty minor in the scheme of things, but it's getting DK back into everyone's minds again, and that's all a part of the plan. All these little things are just the building blocks for something greater. What comes next is, in the air. The prospect of a new Donkey Kong game coming from the Odyssey development team is an exciting one, and yet I have some reservations about that too. I know, I just spent the whole video hyping up the idea, but hear me out. This team has the potential to make one of the very best Donkey Kong games we have ever seen, and really set this series on a new path. But as we've seen over the years, Donkey Kong has not been able to find a stable home. Nintendo has certain teams dedicated to only making games for specific franchises. HAL Labs for Kirby, Aonuma's team for Zelda, and of course, the Tokyo team for the 3D Mario games. So that makes me wonder, are we really going to continue to receive new DK games at steady intervals? Or will DK just continue to float? Maybe getting a new game every 7 years or so from a new studio? I'd like to think this won't be the case. I can't imagine all of this build-up will be for nothing. I will say that I have sources who claim that Nintendo has big plans for DK, and you'll just have to take my word on that one. I don't know if they want me to mention them here. I may have already said too much. So yeah, sources, trust me, bro. Well, regardless of what comes of the next few years, I'm feeling very confident that this truly is the year that a new DK game graces our Nintendo Switch consoles, and I am fully prepared to eat so much shit if I am wrong. Anyway, I'll briefly go over some of my own hopes and dreams for DK's 40th. I don't really have much, but I don't think that what I want is too far-fetched either. I'll get the most unlikely hope out of the way first. This is the 40th anniversary of one of the most influential arcade games of all time. What better way would there be to celebrate than for Nintendo to team up with the 1UP Arcade guys and release a Donkey Kong arcade cabinet? It could include all 3 of the original Donkey Kong arcade games and just... I want this in my life. The reason I say it's unlikely though is because, well, this is Nintendo we're talking about, and they're super weird about the use of their properties by other companies, and would likely just prefer to do something themselves rather than have these guys do it. But at the same time, you know, they teamed up with all sorts of companies for Mario merch, you know, for his 35th, so anything is possible. My next hope is for Nintendo to release some sort of NSO game similar to the likes of Mario 35, being DK40. This is peak creative thinking here, ladies and gentlemen. 40 players compete head-to-head to stay alive in the OG Donkey Kong arcade game. Yeah, that's it. Doesn't get much more simple than that. My final hope is pretty straightforward. If nothing else on my list becomes a reality, then this is all I truly want. I just spent the entire video talking about it. I just want a new Donkey Kong game. Specifically, I think a new 3D title would be the way to go to maximize the potential audience for a new DK game, but I'd be totally down for another 2D platformer too. Just bring back the Kremlings, and the choice is yours, Nintendo. Well, regardless of what happens, I'm always going to be waiting and speculating about the next DK thing. I love this series to bits, and as exciting as the prospect of a new Donkey Kong game coming out this year is, it's important to keep our expectations in check. We could very well get a new one, but we could also realistically get absolutely nothing at all. Zelda has an anniversary this year too, and you know damn well that it will be taking center stage with all kinds of merch and ports and lots of ports, and that's fine. At the end of the day, I don't need any kind of big stupid celebration of DK. Some kind of acknowledgement of his 40th would be cool to see, even if it's just a game and there is absolutely no mention that it's the 40th anniversary of one of the most prolific video game icons of all time, but I digress! As always, time will tell. And don't you worry, if a new game does get announced, I will cover the heck out of it on this channel. Just you wait. I'll catch you guys next time.